Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking in on the Fringe with me, Dave, and Gavin. And if you want to live or travel on the Fringe, we have found, I guess we haven't found anything, but there is a perfect there's a perfect destination for you. I can't call myself a Viking, and Gavin probably can't either. But next
I,
summer,
I
Greenland,
can, Dave. I
you
can, Dave.
can.
I'm a
How
proud
much?
Viking.
How much?
I'm
How much?
a quarter.
Oh, a quarter Viking. Wow.
I'm a
So
quarter
you're
Viking.
probably as much of a Viking as like, I don't know, I would think a Packers fan.
Well, it's funny because they all are Packers fans. Um,
No shit.
funny you say that. Uh, actually, I think they're Vikings fans these days. But
Oh, probably, yeah. Or Lions fans. They're smart. They're bandwagoners.
I don't think they are, but they should be. I'm very happy because I'm not someone heavily interested in professional sports, but every year when I check in for about 2 weeks and watch the NFL highlights, I go, man, wouldn't it be great if the Lions did well this year? And you know what?
Hmm.
They're doing well this year.
Yes, they are.
They are. And it's honestly so nice to see from a team that has had to put up with so much abuse and ridicule over, honestly, I think most of their existence. Um,
Hmm.
so, it's just good to see the underdog doing well. That's a nice feeling. Speaking of underdogs doing well, where are we going? Where are we going this week?
So we could go off to Nuke, and
No.
we're not talking a weapon. We're talking a city in Greenland, so the capital of Greenland. They just got a brand new airport that
They
they're
did. They did get a brand new
they're
airport.
roll they're rolling out, and they're rolling out flights next year in summer. They're gonna have a nonstop from Newark up to Greenland,
Scenic
and it's gonna
Newark.
be bringing. Yep, Newark is on the map, ladies and gentlemen.
Not a bad airport, by the way.
I've never
Air,
been.
airport, airport to Newark to Nuuk. That's going to be about 5, 6 hours. It's going to be on United. I believe they're bringing in a flight to I think LaGuardia or JFK, probably
Yeah, I think
JFK.
it was JFK. Yeah, I think it
It
was
was
JFK.
JFK in 26. Um, this is really big news because in the past, there's been what? There's been one airport, basically. There's been one airport doing international flights. And one of the issues that I have when talking about Greenland, I love talking about Greenland, but man, I have a hard time pronouncing things. So previously, the main airport was the Kangerlussuaq Airport. That was in the sort of the middle of the country, uh, which is massive, by the way. It's also worth noting there are only 57,000 people in the entire island. Um, this is uh, this is a very large, physically large island. If you put Texas and Alaska together, Greenland is still bigger. Um, and it is mostly uninhabited. And the population has risen very rapidly recently, but it was really small to begin with. So why are they opening up all these new airports now, Dave?
Well, I would imagine they want to get some money coming in, and they're looking at it in terms of we can turn Greenland into a new kind of off the beaten path tourism destination. And Greenland is trying to develop its economy. Long time, basically, the main industry was fishing, and you also had some U.S. military bases there a long time ago. But basically, fishing and basically being dependent on Denmark to take care of them. And I think the Danish government is going, look, we can't keep just footing the bill for everything. It's very expensive to run Greenland from Copenhagen. So we're going to try to expand some of the infrastructure up here. in Greenland. We're going to get tourists in here to hopefully build and develop the economy, which I think is not a bad idea if people know what they're getting into when they go up there, because it's probably not going to be like other parts of Northern Europe where it's very developed. It's going to be very off the beaten path. It's going to be tough. It's going to be cold. And it's going to be one of those places where you get to go and be one of the first people there, but it's going to be a challenge the whole entire way in terms of food, in terms of getting around, climate, bugs, you name it.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the demographic they're trying to attract is people who will be okay with that. People who are looking for a challenge, people who are looking for solitude. And if you read a lot of reportage on it, they're very clear. They don't want to sort of the phrase they use, which I find hilarious, is they don't want to turn into another Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
Famously, Iceland kind of opened up to the world and became a major hotspot tourist destination and was kind of overwhelmed, still is kind of overwhelmed by the amount of tourism they get, particularly in the summer months. You can walk around Reykjavik and it's usually more tourists than Icelandic people. Um, it's a trade-off because the Icelandic economy is doing really well, but certainly there's been grumbling about it there, and I think people are concerned in Greenland. An interesting point is that the new airport in Nuuk, and actually the two other airports, international airports, that they're going to build in the country, is actually being funded by a Danish loan structure that was basically set up to prevent the Chinese from investing in the country. Originally, a group of Chinese investors were going to pony up the money to build the airport in Nuuk and a few other ones as well. And the Danish government basically stepped in and went, well, we want you to be more independent and we want you to have another stream of income. And we don't want the People's Republic directly involved in this. Um, so that was sort of an
Yep.
interesting geopolitical maneuver there. And there is intense American and Chinese geopolitical interest in Greenland. But I think a lot of people do view this as, finally we're moving away from what was an industry dominated by fishing and basically reindeer. And now we're moving into an actual more developed service-based economy. But as you mentioned, it's all from the ground up. Like it's very rudimentary, and they are investing in it. And the Greenlanders are definitely ready to do business, but there is, I think, a degree of trepidation about the amount of tourism that they will be able to accommodate. But it also remains to be seen how many people are actually going to show up. How many
Mm-hmm.
people are going to start flying in? Now that you have direct flights to Copenhagen, now that you are going to have direct flights to the US, this is changing things, and it could change very rapidly.
Well, on top of that, too, I mean, okay, you're building these airports, you're building this infrastructure. They obviously have a long-term plan, and I haven't looked at anything, but this is not something they're looking at for 5 to 10 years. They're looking at this from a long-term sustainable perspective. And
Yeah.
if this goes well for a couple of years, and if you have another pandemic or you have something where travel stops internationally, then what are you going to be able to use this infrastructure for? And okay, you have some nice airports in Greenland, but who's actually going to be flying in there? Who's actually going to be utilizing them? And it's probably going to be hard to say, okay, Greenland's going to become the new anchorage of Europe, where we're going to build, a huge freight cargo center at one of these airports. And that's possible, but I don't see it happening. I look at that and go, that would be a huge investment. And plus, you'd have to deal with the weather, and you'd have to probably bring people in to work in these because the cities wouldn't be big enough. And yes, it would be maybe an incredible project if you could get it to work. But what's Plan B? What's Plan C if tourism doesn't work for the economy there?
Well, and I think this is also because they're trying to veer away from as unfortunately, as the ice caps melt, more and more land is available. And of course, you can imagine Greenland is thought to be very mineral rich. The current government in Nuuk, and it's worth, I think we've touched on this, but it's worth noting Greenland is a territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. It's very autonomous in pretty much everything, but it is a part of Denmark. It does have its own parliament, though, and it does have its own prime minister. And the current government, I know, has been deliberately trying to avoid focusing on mineral resources. I think for somewhat understandable reasons. They're afraid of a gold rush. They're afraid of a bunch of countries getting involved. They're afraid of the environmental impact. I mean, probably we're talking natural gas, we're talking uranium. These are not things that don't leave environmental footprints. So they're trying to avoid that while maintaining economic independence or creating economic independence. But I absolutely agree with you. To create the kind of freight hub that you do have in Anchorage, that would be a massive investment, and they're just not there yet. But
Hmm.
they're definitely, I think this is a step in the right direction. It'll just be interesting to see where they wind up going.
Yep, it will. And how many Instagram and TikTok videos are going to be featuring Greenland next
I,
summer?
I feel like there are going to be a lot of people. This is just a gut feeling. I can feel it in my third eye, in my chakra. I feel like there are going to be a lot of people putting them doing yoga poses on Instagram at Nook. I feel like for
Yep,
whatever
at
reason,
midnight.
at midnight yoga. Um, anyways, uh,
So,
I, I not, by the way, not to disparage people who want to do that. I just feel like that's going to happen.
yeah. Well, it's, I think, probably even going to become something where it's like, okay, this is the Ubud of the North in terms of it's going to attract
Um,
some sort of hippie-ish, outdoorsy kind of tourist who wants to go up there. And it's obviously going to be for, just a couple of months in the summer, but go up
yeah,
and spend a month or two in Greenland and get away from everything and find
for
yourself and find inner peace before it gets
for
really
the
cold.
yeah. So basically, live, laugh, love, but at negative 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Um, can you just for those of our listeners who don't know, can you explain Ubud, the reference?
Okay, so Ubud is a city in central Bali. It's become very, very popular in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years
Yeah.
with hippies, and it's a big yoga mecca. So you have a lot of people that come to Bali. Bali is very different in terms of the type of tourists that visit. Ubud is a different type of tourist, primarily, where they're there to kind of feel the culture and feel nature and just kind of relax and get away. And some people are there, as part of, a bigger trip in Bali, but the vast majority of people that are up there that are staying longer term, if they're digital nomads or if they're just kind of kicking it in Bali for a while, they're there primarily just to kind of seek some sort of enlightenment and seek some sort of deeper understanding of themselves and of nature and Balinese culture.
Quote unquote spiritual reasons. Not that there's
Hmm.
anything wrong with that. So, uh yeah, so that's the reference there. We'll, you know, good luck to the people in Nuuk and elsewhere in Greenland. Um and wishing them the best of luck. Uh but yeah, it'll be very exciting to see what happens and to see if more economic independence leads to actual independence, which I think
Hmm.
is very much the aim of the current government. Is
I agree.
they're trying to move it in a direction where they can be fully independent of Denmark, and I think Denmark is starting to realize that this is going to be more or less inevitable, and they're trying to create a situation where any separation will be on terms amenable to both countries.
Yep. We'll make this into a win-win, non-confrontational break.
Boy, and isn't it nice when people want that to happen?
If only.
If
Just sit
only.
around and anyway, we're gonna call it. Thank you guys for checking in and listening to our episode and a little bit of spitballing about Greenland. And we will be back shortly with a couple more episodes on the Fringe.
Awesome.